talking and going through this and explaining whatever it was, jot down your question. And then we'll get to it after we're done with the presentation so that we can get through the whole thing first. Because we found out at International, if we allow questions in between, we never make it to the end. and this part of it is very important. We want to get from the start to the finish. So make sure you have pen and paper in front of you to write down whatever questions you may need. That being said, I want to send it over to my cohort in crime to start us off. Jimmy O'Connor.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hopefully we're having a great conference so far. Okay, what we call the silly, crazy time of year every year, that's what we're going to cover is... What'd you say?
That's the idea.
It's not you.
It wasn't you, Jimmy.
Yeah, but it's not you.
It wasn't you.
Okay, I don't need the thing.
Neither do I.
All right, so the bottom line is we need to make sure we get through the nominating process and election process correctly. Last year, we had 7 lodges that had to redo it because when it got questioned and the meeting minutes went to the chief compliance office, it was done incorrectly. So we want to avoid this. Let's do this the right way. I'll run through the slides. I'm not going to read each one. You all can read. Sean is going to post this and all the other PowerPoints and stuff on the state website. So as Gary asked, please, questions at the end or we're not going to get through it. Okay. I know there's been questions on who and what and why. One thing we'll cover real quick. Administrator. The administrator does not go through the regular nominating committee and election process. If your administrator leaves today, the Board of Officers appoints an administrator. Within 6 months, the membership votes him in. Now, let's say after 3 weeks you want to get rid of him, you don't have to wait 6 months. A lot of questions on that. People are confused. That's why the administrator is not listed on the wall for what you can put in a letter of intent to run for an office. So right there, May 1st, 2022, the lodge using 3 trustees. So if a lodge uses 3 trustees, your quorum is 5 because you have 9. If you have 2 trustees, you got 8, your quorum's still 5. If you're running with 1 trustee, your quorum is 4. So president, vice president, chaplain, treasurer, 1-year trustee, 2-year trustee, 3-year trustee, and if a position goes vacant. An active member. We're all members now. Keep the gender. I'm not even using one. Let's keep the gender out of it. A bona fide. Somebody's paying a fine when this is done. Keep the gender out of it, please. A bona fide member that's been an active, paid dues member at least 6 months immediately preceding the election dates. Have completed at least 1 year in another lodge elected office. So if they completed a year as trustee or chaplain or vice president, treasurer, then they could run because they at least served 1 office prior to the president, which used to be governor. Bottom line is the fraternal leader of the lodge corporation. Must be a member of the Moose Legion or the Women of the Moose within 60 days of being elected. We called for a clarification on that yesterday to the Chief Compliance Office because they were going to change that to where that had to be in effect May 1st. Well, they did the same as last year. The issue is if you're not a Women of the Moose or a Moose Legionnaire by May 1st, you cannot be entered in the system as of right now. Stay tuned for the changes, as my cohort would say. Bear with us. Vice President, an active member at least 6 months immediately preceding the election. Must be a member of the Moose Legion or the Women of the Moose within 60 days of being elected. Well, I'm going to tag on to that 60-day part. Not only be a Moose Legionnaire or Women of the Moose, but have your training done in 60 days too. Okay. Chaplain, an active member for at least 6 months immediately preceding election date. Moose Legion, Women of the Moose within 60 days. It starts to get repetitious.
Point at Sean.
Next.
Help? No microphone, no PowerPoint. Ain't we got fun? In the morning, in the evening, Jimmy doesn't sing.
You can't even move it?
Keep singing, I'm leaving.
Hey! Treasurer trustee must be an active
Right.
member of the lodge. Must be a member of the Moose Legion or the Women of the Moose within 60 days. Going back to, yes, it gets repetitious. All right, just forget this. Next. Administrator continues to be elected for a satisfactory term. So as I said before, administrator gets appointed by the elected board of officers. Within 6 months, that administrator needs to be elected. They get appointed by the board of officers. Within 6 months, get elected by the membership. If you want to get rid of them, you don't have to wait 6 months. This is a business. It's not personal. If you don't have the right person as the business leader of your lodge corporation, then how is that good for every member of that lodge corporation and the lodge corporation itself? We need to remember, we need to run it like a business. Okay, training, I'll say it again. We need to have our training done within 60 days of taking office. Our training coordinator, King Bob, is going to talk to the trainers, he probably has already started, to get a good, robust training schedule to accommodate having everybody trained within 60 days. Now, Gary and I are not hypocrites. We're not going to say you have to have training without us taking training. We take ours online the first week of January every year. We're not asking you to do anything that we're not willing to do ourselves. Administrator must also take 2 hot. Within 6 months taking the office, there's been communications about finally rolling out the online 2 hot classes. Then in addition to that, after the 2 hot class, which is the prerequisite to take the administrator training school, and it's not just administrators that can come to a training school, the administrator training school, anybody that's had the 2 hot can come to administrator training. The 1 year, we had a lodge send 5 people. Some lodges have 3 or 4 people doing the duties of the administrator. Whatever works for your lodge corporation, there's no book. What works at Harrison's not going to work at Mansalota. What works at Mansalota isn't going to work at Wyoming. And at Munising, if you don't like the way it works, you're going to be at Lake Superior. So, next.
So before it's on your pad is when can we do 2 hot? The new module has been put together. They have to now train the trainers. So we have to go through the train-the-trainer portion of it all before we can get it out to you guys as administrators or office assistants or whoever, and listen to this, whoever wants to go through the training. It is not limited to just the administrator. Anybody can go through any training class that's out there, male or female.
Thank you. House committees cease business and business is handled in the Board of Officers meeting. Decorum issues are handled by the executive session in the Board of Officers meeting. Per Robert Rules of Order, as in Ghostbusters, don't cross the streams. Your officer meeting minutes are separate from your executive session meeting minutes and are separate from your general membership meeting minutes. If you're jumping around from executive session to officers and then back to executive session, try not to do that. Sometimes, forgot to mention this, but for IRS tax purposes, we need to make sure these meeting minutes are right. We're not going to turn this into a meeting minute class 101. But that's why it's important that the business leader or whoever the business leader asks or designates to take the meeting minutes, that you have 3 sets of meeting minutes for at least 2 meetings a month. Unless you're Sault Ste. Marie. I've been told. So, joint meetings were eliminated, but when you have a lodge where you have a great chapter and a great Moose Legion unit, when you're going to put together a newsletter, don't call it a joint meeting, call it a planning meeting. Do whatever works for your lodge corporation, do whatever works for your lodge membership, so they know the functions and activities for them as a member, and to bring in their qualified guests to bring into the lodge, for the lodge to do it right, to make revenue. Gender out of it. Men and women are members of the Moose. I've already had 5 lodges. Well, Jim, we don't want the women to be officers. Hey, no problem. Then I'll have the first lodge with a whole women's board. I already had that threat last year when I went to a lodge. I won't say the name of the lodge, I was 69. So they told me, we're not going to join the Moose Legion, you won't make me. I said, you're right, we're going to have all women officers. Well, by the time I left, I signed 10 Moose Legionnaires, the Board of Officers and the Sergeant at Arms. Don't threaten us. We have a job to do too. If you're not going to do what's right for your lodge corporation, then we'll come in and you'll have to deal with the decisions we make to help you run your lodge corporation. In 2022, women members of the Moose may run for select offices. Trustee, treasurer, chaplain, vice president, or vice president. A woman is not eligible to run for president until 2023 because she hasn't held a previous office yet. In some cases, on a case-by-case basis, yes, we did make some appointments last year, and as long as they had at least 10 months of service in the office, then the territory managers are going to have to get with the chief compliance office to deal with that. Next. There are changes to duties of officers effective May 1st, 2021. General laws, anybody can get it on their phone, on the website, or in the book that they finally have in your packets. If you took training previous to here, your packet's up here, including your general laws book. Next. Okay, so in February, we're going to start the 3, well, Gary.
You want me to do it?
Yeah.
Okay, so we are at May the 10th, 9th, whatever we are at here? March, excuse me. So back at the last meeting in February, what should everybody have done already? How many have not? Okay, you're not behind the 8 ball yet. Here's why. It says that you need to form a nominating meeting and then have at least three nominating meetings. The nominating meetings can be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. They can't be the same, you can't do all 3 meetings in the same day is all. So you still have time to go ahead and get the nominating committee together and still have those 3 meetings that are, minimum 3 meetings that are required. So what's after that once you have your 3 meetings? You have to report the findings of the nominating committee to the general membership. When? At the last general membership meeting of March. at the last general membership meeting in March. So when's the election? First general membership meeting in April. Why the time span in between there?
Gotta have 2 weeks for.
I heard it. In case you have to have, in case somebody's eligible to run by petition, they get 1 week to put the petition together. The only petitions that are legal is who? The person that was turned down by the nominating committee only, or persons. They had to be nominated and turned down before they even have the opportunity to run by petition. So for the sake of argument, if Kathy decides that she wants to run for office on March the 25th, and the nominating committee has already turned everything all in, and she sits there and says, well, I can just run by petition. No, she can't, because she was never on the consideration by the nominating committee to start with. Everybody clear on that part of it all? Did I cover all? Yes.
All right.
Oh, last thing, as far as at that, the nominating committee final report. The election committee also needs to announce, is it gonna be an Australian ballot? Or are we gonna vote at the lodge meeting? You can't wait till the day of the election and say, this is what we're gonna do. You gotta declare ahead of time. Do you have to post that the elections is on blah, blah, blah day? No. There's nowhere in the general law that says you have to post, as long as you're adhering to what's in the general laws. Now, I've already talked to one lodge and they want to run it on a different day. Now you gotta have permission from the Office of Compliance. So you can move it from when you normally have to, or normally would do it, but you gotta have permission to do it. Okay?
Okay, so the nominating committee. The most amount of members on the nominating committee is 19. If you have 9 elected board of officers, they're on the nominating committee. 5 good standing members that do not have an elected office can be one of the 5 good standing members to, I don't need the slide. 5 members that aren't elected officers, and then 5 past presidents or past governors. So, if the city president has invited 5 past president governors and 5 good standing members that aren't elected officers and the board of officers, that's 19. So if 19 doesn't show up to the nominating committee meeting, that doesn't mean you can't have a meeting. You personally invited them to come. So as long as you made sure that all 19 people, and as the lodge president, the fraternal leader, is himself, he hopefully told himself, so as long as all 19 have been notified about the meeting, and if only 6 show up, have your meeting, because you notified them.
So one of the items that I missed, because I just seen it, was that the nominating committee needs to submit a written report. Why? What's that?
So you have a record.
That's part of the reason. The other part of the reason is, as soon as somebody gets PO'd and they send a complaint to the Office of Compliance, the Office of Compliance gets a hold of either Jimmy or I, what's the very first thing we're gonna ask you guys for? Make sure that's part of it.
So after you discuss the qualifications of each person that puts in a letter of intent, then the nominating committee, if you have 3 people running for president, don't call them in at the same time. Call them in one at a time. Then send them out and talk about it. Members must be qualified and have been rejected by the nominating committee. So as Gary touched base with the petition, you don't start getting signatures on January 1st if you haven't been turned down by the nominating committee until March 27th. You cannot start getting petition signatures until after you have been rejected by the nominating committee. You start getting signatures first, which has happened, it's null and void, you're out. So, the percentage goes by your membership. That better not be me or I'm gonna find myself. Nope. All right. So 10% of the first active 500 members and 5% or over for each additional that are over 500. So like your Port Hurons, your Sparters and Wyomings, got to get a lot of signatures. Munising, well, if Al and John don't want you, you're in the drink anyways. But keep this in mind that they go by your active membership counts at the start of the beginning of the fiscal year. Next. Questions till the end, please.
Jot it down so you don't forget.
So basically, there's a form that showed the form number earlier. It's available on the website. It's also in the election and nominating committee guide, handbook, whatever they're calling it this week. Next. Oh, and people must sign the petition themselves. Oh, well, little Johnny and little Ricky and Santa, I know they're going to be good with this petition. No. People have to sign the petition themselves. MID number, print their name, sign their name. Okay? One of your lodges a few years ago. I can't have somebody sitting at the bar putting in 9 names to letters of intent for office. They didn't even know they put in their letter of intent to run for office. People have to put in their own letter of intent to run for office. People have to sign the petition themselves. Candidate must be qualified and not nominated by the nominating committee. I think we've already buried that. Petitions must contain their Exhibit E off the Lodge Election Handbook. Okay, I was ahead of myself. Well, that happens. No signatures may be obtained prior. We covered that. No paid employee of the lodge will run for office. Only 2 elected officers can be paid. That's the administrator and the junior past president. Junior past president's office is a term of condition. Now, unless the change was if it was their trade, case by case basis. Executive committee shall set the reasonable rules governing the circulation of the petition. We've covered that. No campaigning. We had somebody run for state prelate years ago that said, hey, I'm going to be at this lodge, this lodge, this lodge. By the way, I'm running for state prelate. Well, he shot himself right in the foot. There's no campaigning.
Unwritten material.
Not written. Social media, electronic. Electronic includes email. You could have one-on-one conversation with somebody. Hey, would you vote for me? Hell no, Jimmy, I don't want you. Thank you, and Brad. Next. Who can't? The member or someone on their behalf. Once again, they got to do it for themselves. What is prohibited? Any printed or written materials suggesting, recommending, or opposing the other one running against the person, or containing names of any candidate. Next. What's allowed? Personal. Why do I have personal contact. Greg already said no. Appointed by the president. 3 good standing members of the lodge is the election committee. So your junior past president can be on the election committee. He's not running. His office is a term of the condition of his office. And as Gary discussed, prior to the election day, so when you have that last nominating committee, we would advise that you decide how the election's going to be. Some lodges, they run it all day, 9 in the morning until 5:30, and then have the meeting at 6. You don't have to run it all day. Nothing says that in the general laws. Whatever works for your lodge corporation, do, but it's not required to run all day. When people say, well, you didn't run it from 6 in the morning until 6 at night. Well, good, I sure as heck wasn't enough.
So one of the other things that we run into is that they tell us we didn't need to run an election because nobody was opposed.
Yeah.
So are they elected? so why would you guys tell us that? There's nothing, so what should happen in that case then, when you get to the general membership part of it, where the election should be the very first item before you start your general meeting, somebody needs to stand up and make a motion that he wants to make the administrator cast an anonymous vote for the ballot that's presented. Somebody seconds it, you guys vote on it, he'll get up, he'll cast the vote for, so that everybody has at least one vote, everybody's elected. Everybody understand that part of it?
Say it again?
Okay, we're running by, I knew I was gonna throw you. So, everybody's unopposed. Somebody from the membership needs to stand up at the very beginning of the meeting and let the president or whoever's presiding over the meeting know that I would like to make a motion for the administrator to cast unanimous ballot for all, as presented. So you guys, somewhere along the line, you still have to read off what's going on in that department, or at least have it in the minutes so they know who's running for whatever. Somebody else seconds it, you guys vote on that particular part of the motion, then the administrator has to stand up in the meeting and he says, as directed by this membership, I cast a unanimous ballot for the names.
That's on the,
That's only if everybody's running unopposed.
is that the last meeting, the one in March, or the one, the first one?
The election meeting, so it's the first meeting in April.
Okay.
I know it's not clear because Jimmy and I run into this every day. And we'll explain it as many times as you want to. The other part of the coin, everybody was sent this little book.
Twice.
It's all been revised so that it's current with the general laws of the order right now. The other part that was sent out. So you want to be an officer. On the back side, there's this little piece of paper that says, cut here. And it's because we need to have some sort of proof, excuse me, that Frank submitted his name and that Bobby didn't put it in for him. So that they understand that they've gone through this little book right here that says, these are your requirements for your particular position, minimum, and you understand that's what's going to be required of you before it even goes to the nominating committee for discussion on whether or not they think you're qualified or not. Yes, international website's up to date with that.
Yes.
So if you have to run it by paper ballot at the election, again, it's the very first item of the meeting. The election committee should be off in a corner with the ballots. Somebody already should have checked their Moose IDs to make sure that they're eligible to be in that meeting. They should have a pad there so they can sign in as you're handing, the election committee is handing them the ballot. Put their ID number down with their name, because if it gets challenged, we need to be able to go back through and document everything that we find. Whether it's in your favor or it's not. And as Kathy would say, paperwork, paperwork, paperwork. You got to have it all. This is very important. This time of year, Jimmy, every field staff member that's out there hate, because this is the most abused part of the general laws. Everybody's got their own way of doing it, and it'll be okay. Nobody else is interested. That's the first thing that gets thrown at us. Nobody else is interested, so why can't we do it this way? Well, nobody else is interested until we get a complaint.
Yep. Okay, 48-hour rule. Ballots are placed in a ballot box, sealed and initialed by the committee. Members for challenges. If no challenge after 48 hours, the ballots can be destroyed. So 48 hours. So that first meeting in April, if it's on the first Wednesday at 7 o'clock. Friday night after 7 o'clock during your dinner, burn them. Get rid of them. Shred them. Whatever you want to do, but wait the 48 hours. We have had cases within 47 hours and 45 minutes that it's been contested. Please follow this 48-hour rule. It's here to protect your lodge corporation. You don't want to do all of this again. We, Gary and I, don't want to have to come to your lodge meeting and say, gotta do it again. Congratulations.
48-hour rule, lock up the ballots somewhere.
A fireproof little safe, a lock box, or put them in the safe at the office. Locked up. Questions at the end? But you're King Bob.
In class, it comes up all the time, people are saying, how many votes are required to elect someone?
At least one person. That was covered. So voting in the sign of the order, unless they decided that it's gonna be handwritten and cast a ballot, or raised by hands, or an Australian ballot, whatever it's gonna be, don't decide it that night. Now, if it is requested the night of the election that people want to do it anonymously and handwrite it, then make sure you note that in your meetings. Because before you have the first meeting in April, everyone should know what you're doing after that last nominated committee in March. So let's try our best to be consistent. I can't say it enough, so you don't have to do it again. All right. Yes, let's go to that. Frequently asked questions, FAQs. We might have covered them already. Next. Officer installation. You swear at the officers by April 30th. Swear them in, swear at them, whatever you want to do. They take the obligation of their oath. Like they're going to take leadership training, like they're going to hold each other accountable. They're going to do the duties described in their office out of general laws. So they take the oath. This has to be done prior to the beginning of the fiscal year. If it doesn't, and there's extenuating circumstances, then that's handled on a case-by-case basis. This is the way it should be done. Lodge elections are important. Gary covered that. All the procedures. Officers elected are the leaders of your lodge. Don't complain if you didn't go vote. Don't complain if you didn't put your name in a letter of intent to run for an office. It's your lodge, but if you want to be part of it, then be part of the solution. Put your name in. I like this screen.
Where do you end? So, the night of the election, and you're at your general membership meeting. I gotta be politically correct here, don't I?
Unless you want me to say it, I don't care.
We know that every lodge out there does not run their general membership meeting like they should.
You were too nice about that.
I said I gotta be politically correct. At least one time a year, let's set it up like it's supposed to be, and let's make it that night of the election. So how's it supposed to be set up? Do we gotta set the stations all up anymore?
Ask Harrison, they do it.
They can come to Harrison's ZB anytime they want.
They changed everything from what it used to be. Now there's this long table up front, instead of having the 5 or 6 stations that it used to be in the way back, and then they moved them from the circle to out on the side. So just go into your leadership handbook, the diagram's there, follow it. I can tell you this, I was in a couple lodges, and I get there for general membership meeting, and I get there early knowing they're having a general membership meeting, and all I hear is, oh shoot. So they're running for their book. And they're back in the back room, and there's 2 or 3 of them, and they're running around, and they're saying, oh yeah, this goes here, oh yeah, this goes here. And I walk back there, and I just look at them, and I says, guys, gals, don't insult my intelligence. I know that you don't set it up. You don't have to do it just because I'm here.
Bingo.
I'm there to help. Jimmy's there to help. But what we're asking is at least one time a year, do the proper thing. Get the book out. Make sure it's all being taken care of properly. All right, here we go. Questions? John.
What's an Australian ballot?
So Australian ballot is the paper ballot. That's all it is. Some lodges, like back when I was administrator, because we had 1,200 members, and back then we used to get 3 or 4 positions that would have at least 2 names to it. We'd open up the voting to start at 2 o'clock, and we wouldn't quit till just before the general membership meeting. It gave every shift worker at that time a chance to at least get in there and have their say. Very rarely do we run into the issue now where there's more than one person running for office. And usually, if there's more than one person running for the office, it's with a motive in mind. And the motive is, I'm gonna be elected and I'm gonna get all the bar prices lowered because that's where they should be. Not having any clue as to what it takes to run the lodge dollar-wise. Or, it's because I don't like Jill being the administrator, and I'm gonna go in there and we're gonna correct things, and she's not gonna do it this way no more. That's 90% of it. They do not like the administrator, regardless of man or woman, and they're gonna go in there and they're gonna do everything in their power to get that administrator removed. All I can say is good luck. Exactly. So that's one of the things, as Bob says, is nominating committee. When you guys are going through there, and gals, when you're going through the process, don't just approve the person because you got nobody else. If you have to hold the election and that particular office is vacant, so be it. We'll go back to it after the election's all done. It wouldn't be the first time ever that that's ever happened. What you have to worry about is that you have at least 5 officers that are gonna be on the Board of Officers. Why? That's only part of it. If you can't operate as a corporation, which means you're holding your officers meeting and your general membership meeting and your executive session meeting if required, then that social quarters permit that's on the wall is null and void. And without that social quarters permit, what happens? No social quarters. So this is very important. Next question. There was one over here, so we'll let you go first, ma'am.
Kathy Thomas, Reed City, 705. My question is, when you said that they have to check cards before somebody comes in, who would be the person to check the cards?
Okay. So, normally, it was who's supposed to check the cards when you get into your general membership meeting? Regardless if it's election night or if it's a general membership meeting night. Normally, it's the sergeant at arms. And why do I say normally? You gotta have one first. So that doesn't mean that that's the person that has to do it. It could be an inner outer guard, it could be a committee person, it could be one of the other officers. Somebody needs to be checking the cards. Okay, now I'm gonna hit a touchy subject, and I don't wanna get killed on this one. Ladies, this is gonna be very important for you so everybody understands, because we're getting pushback on it. It says that my card says that I'm a good member till 2025 or 2030. That is chapter dues. It has nothing to do with the lodge. The bottom line that's in the boldest print, and you're going to see slides on this tomorrow with Kathy's presentation, is the line that counts. If that is not current on the day you walk in for the election, they're not going to let you vote. If you paid online and you print the receipt out and you bring it with you with your current Moose card, yes, you can be allowed. If you pay the administrator before you go to the meeting, yes, you can be allowed. Next question.
Over here, Gary. There, she's been waiting.
For what, Lynette Schuchart, Redford 1743. For what reason would the nominating committee reject an applicant?
Ooh, good question.
You want me to get that one?
Go for it.
Okay. Hi there. So, the nominating committee is supposed to be selecting people to run for the office that's gonna look to the best interest of every paid active dues member and not their clique. We have members that might be great in the kitchen. Might have members that are great repairing things. That doesn't mean they're gonna be the best fraternal leader or the best business leader. They're making decisions to make sure that the Lodge Corporation is gonna run the way the Lodge Corporation and its membership needs and what the membership deserves. So the nominating committee, when they go through things, if the person has a record and a folder and has been nothing but a decorum issue, 48.8. So how are you gonna expect this member to sit in the executive session when when little Johnny's the biggest violator of decorum? I don't think that's the right idea. So, but we can't tell you how to run your nominating committee and tell you don't have little Johnny, or don't have Peggy, or definitely don't have Rodney. But we're not going to tell you that because it's going to be what Gary said or Jimmy said. But if the nominating committee feels that the person is the right person for that job, that's one of the main reasons why they're going to reject them for running.
So here's another scenario. Barb decides she wants to run for the office of president. So the name's in there, submitted to the nominating committee. Can the nominating committee go ahead and say, yes, we're gonna accept her? Why? Okay,
Well, that's eligibility. So
but that's a reason to turn them down.
But I'm talking about for other reasons.
It's,
If they're eligible for every other thing, can he,
here's,
you know, he's been an officer before and he did a crappy job.
here's the best thing about turning them down. Whoever we're turning down, we don't have to give them a reason why we turned them down. We don't have to explain nothing to them. All we need to do if they come up to the nominating committee at the time of their report, and they ask, it was a decision of the nominating committee to not allow that name.
And it's got to be
End
documented.
of conversation.
And it's got to be documented.
Now, I'm gonna go back to Barb. Everybody says Barb's not eligible. Aha. Yes, she is. Here's how. If there's no other name turned in a particular office, and yes, she hasn't been in an elected office for a year, we can still put in a dispensation prior to the election. So prior to even the final nominating meeting, you have to send a dispensation into the compliance office with all the signatures of the nominating committee, asking for dispensation for that particular person to run because they haven't been an elected officer. So now I'm going to back up to the 6-month requirement because that's in there for part of them also. The 6-month requirement may not only be a woman, it could be a man that just joined. And he or she hasn't been a member for 6 months. As long as the nominating committee only has that name and they can't find nobody else out there, the same thing applies. We can put in for a dispensation for that particular person to go ahead and run for that particular office, even though they don't meet that requirement. But the same thing happens on that. All the members of the nominating committee have to sign that dispensation request. And I want to tell you this, the compliance office is awesome about getting dispensations back to you guys. Normally, if you send it in today, depending on what the request is, you have it tomorrow. Don't depend on that. Make sure it goes in a little bit early. Question in the back.
Yeah, 19 members of the non-com.
Wait, hang on. I can't hear you.
All right, you have 19 members of the non-com, 6 of them are the ones that show up and actually do the work. You still gonna get all 19 signatures for dispensation?
All right, so even though, like Jimmy said, there could be 19 names, we all know reality. Because there's that spot for the 19 names, when you get done asking people to be on the nominating committee, you're probably only gonna be at the 10 or 11 mark. Whoever's at that nominating committee of that night needs to sign that dispensation so that we can move forward on. And it should not be just the board of officers, because they are not just the nominating committee. You better have some committee people that are, or past governors that were part of that nominating committee on that dispensation also.
Past presidents.
Yeah, Elise,
It won't bite you.
trust me, I don't need a microphone.
No,
Can
she
everybody
doesn't.
hear me?
What?
I can speak louder. Your question, I have a question on the administrators voting for the election.
Okay?
As you know, our administrator's not there very often. Can the assistant administrator cast the vote in the place of the administrator?
All right, so you get to the meeting and the administrator's not there, and I just explained that the administrator should be the one to, who fills in for the administrator?
Treasurer.
That's the person that takes over. Yep.
If you have one person or one office that's being, more than one person's running, but everybody else, there's only one, you still do the Australian ballot?
Correct,
Okay.
correct.
Little Johnny behind.
Behind you.
John Deason-Roth, Munising. It said that you had to, within 60 days, be part of the Legion to be an elected officer.
Correct.
Now, so you can be elected without being a member of the Legion, but you got 60 days to join the Legion?
That's correct.
Thank you.
That's what we were just cleared out, right behind him, Phil.
We got one over here.
Yeah, Roger Caruso, Avon, Rochester. In the event you can't get enough signatures on the petition because of, actually because of the COVID, and there's not enough members coming back in, can you get dispensation for that if the nominating committee requires you to do that?
The only thing I can tell you is we would have to get a hold of the compliance office and see if he'll allow that.
Roger Kelly, Three Rivers. Who validates the ballots?
So he said, who validates the ballot? There was a three-person election committee. That three-person can be men or women, however you put them there, cannot be anybody that's on the ballot to start with. They go off in a corner somewhere and they count it all, and then normally the last item of business at the general membership meeting is the announcement of what happened with the election. And somebody from the election committee would make that announcement. That's why there's three, so you got more than one person counting it all.
Am I on that?
You're on now.
Rick Redding, Benton Harbor 1570. I have two really quick. One is really quick because everybody in the room probably knows but me. What is too hot?
Too Hot is 2-day hands-on technical training.
Okay, that makes sense. And then second question, I think Jimmy said that you can't be on the board if you are a paid. So I have a bartender who's a trustee.
They cannot be an officer and be paid. It's in general laws. So if he's being paid right now, he needs to make a choice. Or she needs to make a choice.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Gary, I was just gonna ask you, if you have a person that's elected and is non-compliant after 60 days, what does the lodge do?
Okay, so, that's where Jimmy and I come in. We try to work with every lodge that's out there, whether it's male, female, as far as the Board of Officers is concerned. We go way past where we probably should, allowing the man or woman to stay on the board without the leadership training. So now what we have is we have an action plan that we have to file with our office, and we also have to review with every lodge that we go into. So that would be an action plan item. In that action plan, we have to document what happened. Are they, because a lot of times it's like 5 or 6 officers aren't. So what we'll go, when we go in there, we say, okay, 3 of the 5 now have upgraded and they're compliant, we're still working on it with the other 2. So we can keep that particular action plan item open. Once we get to no effort, then we'll come back in and we'll have a compliance sheet that every officer will sign saying that I understand the general laws to be blah, 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 blah. And in the other, there's gonna be that all officers will be leadership trained within 10 to 14 days. If that doesn't happen, then we go back in and you're gone. Have we done it already? Yes.
Hi, Mary Constantine from Avon, Rochester. And my question is, when you were talking about the unopposed, and if they do it at the meeting, and everybody is in favor, what if someone is not in favor?
Okay, so here's where you're at. It only takes 1 vote to elect. So if the majority, when you make that motion, if there's 10 people that say yes and there's 3 people that say no, what happens?
Yes.
So the motion's gonna carry, so then the administrator still gets to do that act because that's what happened with that particular motion. Be nice to me.
I have 2 questions.
No?
The requirement for the men to be members of the Legion
Yes.
in order to hold office. Is there a way of streamlining that membership? Currently, a lot of times the actual joining is miles away, and at $5 a gallon, okay, or because of their workload, whatever, they can't always travel that 50, 60, 70 miles to a meeting to get initiated into the Legion. Is there a way that can be done either by Zoom or another way of speeding that process up to make it more convenient for those people, so we don't discourage them from joining and we don't discourage them from being a member?
So what we talked about the other day was, in the MLAC class, was mini ceremonies. Does anybody know what a mini ceremony is for the Moose Legion? Okay, so what happens there is you have to have permission from the Moose Legion secretary for that jurisdiction to hold a mini ceremony at your particular lodge. In order to do that, you have to have 4 bodies present from the Moose Legion. If you contact them, normally they can find the people that can go out and represent that particular Moose Legion. I know that the one I did in West Branch, it was me and Phil Losi, I forget who the other one was, but we actually went to the lodge and we took care of it. So yes, there is a way of streamlining that.
Now, my second question, because you said something about the administrator, did I understand that the new board must reaffirm the administrator every year?
No.
Just once, and then he's screwed? I mean,
You're not getting out of it.
Scott? Hey, Gary, and what you were saying about the mini,
Ceremony?
You said four Legionnaires. Can it be the 4 Legionnaires from your lot?
No, because you still have to have permission from the Moose Legion secretary, and he will okay whoever needs to be at that particular lodge. So you need to run that through. In your case, you're 107? 108, so you gotta run it through Dave. Mike?
I think I know my own answer, but I'm gonna ask this question. You're saying 6 months as a member of the lodge. They have to be a member of, say, Harrison for 6 months before they can run for office.
Of that lodge are running for office,
Correct.
so.
Okay, because we've got guys trying to transfer in to run for office. All right.
They could run, but they'd have to have dispensation. And that's up to the nominating committee whether they wanna grant that or not. Any other questions? Oh, over to Robin.
Robin Dooley Marshall, 676. Question. You have an officer that volunteers at the bar, but can he take the tips?
Okay. What is the IRS rule?
A volunteer does not get a free drink. A volunteer does not get a free meal. A volunteer doesn't get tips. Any of those are considered compensation. When I volunteered in Southwest Detroit, my tip money went in the jar for the kids fund. I didn't touch it. But any compensation's compensation. You go to a lodge, everybody's a volunteer. Oh, well, this one got 6 beers for doing something for 5 minutes. That's not a volunteer. Anything, meals, tips, anything, gas receipt, anything is compensation.
If it has a value, it's worth money. If it's worth money, the IRS says you're being paid. Yes, I'm listening. I can see the light bulb go on.
Well, at least you know we're listening to you guys, okay? But Mr. O'Connor just said, well, a gas receipt. And right off the bat, my thought was, so you've got a gentleman who's gonna mow your lawn, and he goes and he buys gas, and he brings you back a gas receipt. We should cover that.
That's an expense.
Right, so I just want to
apologize,
clarify
I'll
that.
reiterate it. An expense, an approved expense that goes on your weekly envelope. Okay, I'll clarify. I'm my own worst. I'll take myself outside and kick my own butt. If you turn in a gas receipt because you're mowing the lawn, but if you got somebody that volunteers at the lodge 5 days a week, and we're going to take a gas instead of paying you, there's a difference. So if you're snow plowing or cutting the lawn and turning in a receipt as an expense versus turning in a receipt for compensation. So yes, do it on a case-by-case basis. Expenses is not,
I know.
thank you, yes.
Any other questions? Jimmy and I want to thank you for attending this session. Here's the first thing we know. We're still going to have issues. We understand that. We're just trying to get away from the bulk of them. And we're trying to make everybody aware of what's going on, especially the ladies, because this is all brand new to them, because this is their first time actually being 100% involved in the process. So we know there's going to be bumps in the road. If you got a question, call either one of us. We'll get you through whatever you got to get through. We want to thank everybody for coming out here. Before we get out of here,
This is a lot better than I expected. This is a better turnout than I expected.
the accounting firm of Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe had the attendance at 108, but that was before I seen probably another 15 or 20 people walk in. That's awesome. Very awesome for a workshop. That we really want to thank you that you had concerns and wanted to get some answers to whatever the case may be. So because of that, we're going to give away some door prizes.
Everybody got their white ticket out? Yep. I gotta tell you, Kathy and I are doing a contest here, because apparently she thinks she's louder than I am. I'm gonna do the first one, Kathy's gonna do the second one, and let us know who's louder. Oh, I don't want that. That's cheating.
That's cheating.
Get out. How? And how?
I can help you.
I got a mic in my mouth. Okay, ready? The first one is 783608.
Over there.
Back here.
What is it?
Okay, the next one's gonna be 783582.
What'd you say? I didn't hear you.
Oh. Gentlemen come up here in the suit right now.
Okay, so who won?
That's the region.
Okay, while you guys are doing that, I just had another question that was asked me, and you guys need to know this. The question was, if you have the chapter, and there's still a lot of lodges out there, can the chapter officer also be a lodge officer? Yes. That does not disqualify him. But, here's the caveat to that part of it all. The chapter officer can work behind the bar and get paid. The lodge officer can't. So if she's a chapter officer and a lodge officer, what happens? There you go.
When I read in both books, general law, it says
They just changed the aluminum new stuff. Well, I can tell you.
King Bob would like all district presidents to see him. Yesterday, pamphlets were put out in baskets. He'd like his baskets back, please. All district presidents see King Bob.
He's just
King
a
Bob.
basket case, Jim.
Prior to me.
So, you guys and gals got